I'd like to call to order the meeting for Bedford Township Board of April 3rd, 2018. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, at this time, could I have Pastor Greg Withrow from the Assembly of Christians please come up and open us up in prayer.
It's a privilege to be able to do this opening today.
Is that mic on, that little green button on the front?
It is.
Okay,
It
cool.
is on.
There we go.
Just a quick reading from Timothy says that we are to give supplications, prayers, intercession, and thanksgiving for all people, but especially for kings and all who are in high positions, that we may lead a peaceable and quiet and godly life in a dignified way. This is good and is pleasing in the sight of God. So let's bow our heads, please, for prayer. Heavenly Father, Lord God, I thank you for the privilege of living in this community, of having a long history here, and meeting my wife here, and the things that I have come to love about Bedford Township. I do pray for this board. I pray because they represent a community here, a community of families and friends growing up together and spawning more generations to come that will hopefully love this community and grow up here and commit to it as well. I pray for discernment for them, that they would have the insight to see the things in front of them with great clarity, to know what is good and what is not. I pray for great wisdom for them, to be able to look down the road to the generations to come and understand and know the implications of the decisions that they make. For everything we do, Lord, has implications for those around us, and not just those, just ourselves. For those around us and for those to come, sometimes for many years to come. So I pray your blessing upon this meeting and upon these men and women gathered here today, that in all the things that we do, that whether we intend to or not, that we would end up in all things honoring and glorifying you. And we pray this in the name of the Lord Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much for being here tonight. Okay, item number 2 is approval of the agenda. I'm sorry for the late notice. I do have a quote here for Tom Redmond's computer to be upgraded, just like all the other computers were upgraded, and the software. If we could add that to item 8G under new business. And I understand if at that point we want to table it, but I would like to make that change. And that's for the ordinance department. I look for a motion.
Motion to approve the agenda. Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Okay, motion supported. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens is excused, Mrs. Hirschberger is excused, and Mr. Peroni.
Aye, and the motion's passed 5-0. Okay, item 3, the consent agenda. The agenda committee reports. A, the committee recommends to the full board to approve and place on file the minutes of the March 20th, 2018 regular meeting of the Bedford Township Board.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion supported by Mr. Frederick. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinneberry?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni.
Aye, and the motion passed 5-0. Okay, item 4, presentations. A, State of the Library Address, the presentation by Jody Russ, the Bedford Branch Librarian. Guys, come on up. You're more than welcome to go up there with her if you...
Yeah.
Good evening. I'm Jody Russ. I'm the community librarian at the Bedford Branch Library.
The handout that I just gave you guys has some brief information about what I'm going to discuss, and I did bring extra copies if anybody wants some. They're on the table over here. So this is an annual report from the Bedford Library, and I say annual, I've been kind of remiss in doing an annual report for you guys, and I know that Sheriff's Department, Fire Department come and do annual reports regularly, so I want to try to make sure this gets on my calendar. And since April 8th through 14th is National Library Week, I feel like April is a good month to do that, so that's why I'm here. I'm here to tell you about all of the things that we do at the library, how successful we've been this past year, and let you know about some of the partnerships that we have in our community that you might not be aware of. So the Bedford Branch Library is just one of the 16 branches of the Monroe County Library System, but we are the busiest branch in the system. So some of the numbers specifically from our branch, we circulated over 175,000 items this past year. We had over 31,000 people attend library events. Over half of those were outreach events where we sent somebody out in the community to various places, which I'll talk more about in a minute. Our public computers were used over 35,000 times in 2017, and nearly 16,000 people accessed our Wi-Fi. That's a lot of people that need to use public computers, and the library is a good place for them to have the option to do that. We circulated over 80,000 items in our digital collection. I don't know if everybody's aware of all the digital materials that we have, but we have books, audiobooks, music, movies, television shows, comic books, and magazines. And I would bet that if any of you have a print subscription to a magazine at your home, it's probably available for free in downloadable format from your local library. So you might want to check that out. Every single one that I subscribe to is in there. So. And then 13,297 people, I got specific on this one, attended non-library events in the library. And what that means is all the organizations that use one of our rooms for meeting for some reason. So we have Bible study groups and we have homeowners associations. There's all kinds of places, organizations that use our facility for meetings, and that's how many people attended those. That's above and beyond all the other numbers there. Throughout 2017. In addition to all of those resources that are provided by the Monroe County Library System to you guys, we also participate in the MELCAT program, which is a statewide delivery system. So that makes it available, makes almost 50 million items available to patrons with Monroe County Library System cards. And they come from over 430 libraries around the state of Michigan, and it includes big libraries like U of M's library and Michigan State's library, as well as community college libraries. And so, you know, good example is my son was doing an auto tech program at community college, and I could borrow the textbook that he needed from Washtenaw Community College and not have to pay $130 for that textbook. So it's a really nice feature to be able to borrow those things from colleges and universities. I just wanted to mention quickly the Library for the Blind and Physically Handicapped. A lot of people don't know to take advantage of this service. And you don't have to have low vision in order to use this service. You just have to have an impairment that makes it difficult for you to read. That can be permanent or temporary. That could be somebody with Parkinson's disease. It could be somebody with dyslexia. It could be somebody who is in a car accident and broke both of their arms. If you can't hold reading material for some reason, you would qualify for free service from the Library for the Blind and Physically Handicapped. And we can help you get set up to do that. They have items available in both digital and print format that get delivered for free to your home. Just a little tidbit that they pointed out. Right now, there's 2.9 million Americans that have low vision, and that number is expected to increase by 72% by 2030. 72%. So then I have a, did you know your library offered this? Because a lot of people don't know. We have a Tai Chi program. We have a yoga program. We have a DIY program that's crafting all that cool stuff you guys see on Pinterest and HGTV. We have a couple of different knitting groups that meet there. We have 7 different book clubs, including one for kindergartners and one for teens, and a girls' night out program, and a nonfiction only. And our most recent one is Books on Tap, which actually meets at Doolittle's, where they can have some beverages and some food while they talk about books. And so that one's always fun. We have 3D printing available at the library. I don't know how many people know that. Our 3D printer isn't big and huge and beautiful because it's, you know, library funds, and so it is what it is, but it can print 5-inch by 5-inch by 5-inch, so it's pretty cool. We do copy and fax services. You can scan to email or save to a USB drive. The most exciting thing we recently added, garden plots. So we have 6 different garden plots out in the library's grounds, and 3 of those are actually now available for people to borrow with their library card. So you borrow the whole plot for the growing season. If you want a garden and you don't have space to do it yourself, you can check out a garden plot at the library. One of them's checked out, so I'm pretty excited about that. We offer computer classes. This summer we will have classes in Word, Excel, Facebook, and digital photo storage. We also offer a one-on-one tech help where you can come in with your smartphone or your tablet or your laptop or a specific software program and get help from a librarian. We also offer a book a librarian service, which really does the same thing, and that's what most people are using it for. Any day, you can call and make an appointment with one of our reference staff and get help with a specific issue that you're dealing with. I have to give them a lot of kudos for keeping up to date on current operating systems and various types of phones, because it's nearly impossible to know what's going on in the tech world, so they do a great job of that. We have a fantastic local history collection. If you haven't seen that collection, you really should take a few minutes to do that. It is getting improved all the time. Trudy Urbani, who I think you're probably all familiar with, is donating all of the materials that have been in her basement to the library, and we have one of our reference staff people going to her home once a week for 4 hours to go through those items and help her index them and get them over to the library. So that collection's growing all the time. You can now do a foreign language learning thing with Mango Languages. That was a recent addition we have. And we also have practice testing available for ACT, college entrance exams. There's all kinds of things on there, nursing exam, postal service exam. There's lots of different things on there. And there's a driver's ed practice test program too. We're offering a STEAM program on Saturdays. So STEAM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Mathematics. And we're doing that program for elementary-aged kids and their families. That'll be on Saturday afternoons. And right now we're working on a 3rd grade reading law. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the 3rd grade reading law, but Michigan passed a law where if you're in 3rd grade and you're not reading at your grade level, according to the M-STEP test, English Language Arts testing, you will be held back as of the 2019 school year. And so, you know, when we run some statistics about that, Bedford had 11.8% of their kids that are not proficient at reading at the 3rd grade reading level. Monroe Schools has 47% of their kids that are not reading at grade level in the 3rd grade. And so that's a lot of kids. And so the Monroe County Library System is working on a program that will help those kids, those families, those teachers, make sure that those kids can bring up their reading levels. And that's what we do every day, because reading is one of the most important things that kids can learn. For our meeting room space, it's used for lots of things. Small study groups, I've noticed recently it must be exam time at UT or community college or something, because there's been a lot of young adults using those as small study groups. College students who are doing online classes can proctor exams with us at no charge. Our reference librarians take care of that service for them. We have tutoring that happens daily in our meeting rooms, and we maintain a list of tutors that people can get in touch with. We have 7 different homeowners organizations meeting there. And Bedford Baseball Club, 3B Baseball, and Brookwood Swim teams all meet there. They do that. The baseball clubs have their umpire meetings and their coaches meetings there. But starting about, 3-4 years ago, the day that they're supposed to do all their uniform sizing was a snow day at school. And so the head of 3B Baseball called me up and said, hey, I can't get into school. I got, hundreds of kids coming to size their uniforms. What can I do? And I said, come on over. The library's community room's open and kids start sizing uniforms. So I'm a big baseball fan, so fits right in there. And then partnerships I wanted to tell you about. We're working with the Bedford Beautification Committee on their Green Our Community trying to educate people about plastic bags and how harmful they are, and give people some alternatives for that. Bedford Flower and Garden Club and the Bedford Herb Group both take care of the grounds out behind the library. We work with the Bedford Robotics Program. I am one of the robotics coaches, so they use our meeting rooms for parent meetings and when they're practicing presentations, because it's a lot quieter than the robotics center. Bedford Public Schools, the junior high English teachers all bring out their students over to the library once a month to check out books and to learn about library resources. We are now touching 800 junior high students on a monthly basis. We have 350 high school students that come in at least 3 times per year, and we're meeting with 12 to 18 English language arts teachers once a month to share with them about reading and library resources. The Medicare Medicaid Assistance Program comes to the library, RSVP, Monroe County Veterans Affairs. We just partnered with the 6th grade science classes for Adopt a Road. We will be cleaning up the stretch of Jackman between Temperance and Stearns. Monroe Middle College and the Youth Opportunity Programs both come there. And then we do outreach to the senior center and the senior living facilities in Bedford to talk about library programs and provide library services, especially our one-on-one tech help. That's very popular when we go there. Couple of grants that we've received. The Monroe County Environmental Fund has granted us money 2 years in a row. So those gardens were put in last year with grant money. And the person who did those gardens was actually invited to come speak at a countywide event for Earth Day because they thought it was such a unique program. So that's something that we're really happy to be talking about. And then we just found out last week that we got a second grant to help in our recycling efforts with the beautification committee. So we'll be putting in some additional recycling options over at the library as well. I don't want to forget to mention our Arts for Our Future show happens every year. We're on 38th year this year, maybe? I think it might be the 38th year. And that happens the first weekend in November every year, and we invite artists to enter their pieces in the art show. And then that's what we purchase pieces for our Art for Loan program and our permanent art collection. So the Art for Loan program is very unique. You can use your library card to check out a piece of unique art and hang it in your home or your office for 3 months at a time. Not many libraries offer that. We also have the Bedford Arts Club has a spring art show that's coming up in April, and we do a student art show with all of the grades of Bedford Public Schools as well, and that will be happening in May. So that's always fun to give the kids an opportunity to be in an art show. And a couple quick things I wanted to mention about our local history room. They've had over 15 volunteers that have been working on indexing all of the material in there. And so essentially that's making a big, huge list of everything that's available and where you're gonna find it. And they're putting all of those indexes on our website. And the cool news is within the last month, we've had somebody from Canada contact us and somebody from France contact us because they found our website and they wanted information about their family that was from Bedford. So it was pretty cool to be able to share the information that we had with them. So really it's touching people around the world. And that's really nice to see. So I wanted to say we work hard every day at the Bedford Library. We want to be what our community needs from us. We are always receptive to new ideas about things to do, programs to host, and we welcome input from anybody. So I think that's all I had. Do you have any questions?
Well, thank you very much for being here. I will say from my end, you guys are very easy to work with. You have an extremely sharp board of, your group that is together. You really do have a great team to work with. You really care about the library. I mean, you go the extra mile to make sure that we're doing everything we can do to run as lean as possible and offer the most services we can. We work well together. I mean, with the LED initiative, I mean, we're saving almost $1,400 a month alone with that.
Right.
You're looking at the handler systems with the HVAC systems with sensors on the ducts to where we could save another $15,000 a year. So you're constantly thinking about ways to save to ultimately, to be able to do more, at the library. So I appreciate that you going the extra mile because it really does show. I mean, the place is amazing. I mean, we usually at least 3 times a week. So,
Yeah.
my family's constantly there.
Yep.
So anybody have any questions? Ms. Tinderberry?
It's not a question. I just want to, I don't really want to blow up Jody and how great she is, but she is great. She's made this more than a library. I mean, the library of old in Bedford is gone. This is a community space, a community building, a community atmosphere where all of these things that, many that she created are taking place, and it can reach every single aspect of our community. People that, normally wouldn't be coming to the library come for all these other different programs and things that are going on. And our advisory board, Elaine Kuntz is here as well. She's the chairman of our advisory board, and they just do an amazing job, and their meetings are just so thorough in terms of making sure that Bedford public, their needs are addressed, not just to check out a book, but to always be advancing. And I'm so proud of our library. I think that it's far and away better than any library in the county, and maybe even the several counties around. They just do a great job. They're always looking for new ways to utilize the facility, and I just really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And you're really blessed to have Miss Karen. My kids love Miss Karen.
Miss Karen is special.
Anybody else have any comments or anything? Well, if that's it, we really appreciate you being
you.
here and give us the update, so.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, 5, comments. There's public comment. Comments limited to 2 minutes for board agenda items only. So come on up.
Good evening, Logan Tisdale. This in regards to 8E. I asked you the last meeting there if you had the answers to the questions for the Monroe County Sheriffs in regards to the contract. You said that you didn't have them yet, but you were going to get them. I found out that last week the response was that they had gotten a response from it. I went to the clerk's office, got a request for Freedom of Information Act. I submitted that to the township clerk on the 28th of March. Gave them to like April 2nd or something, which probably could have been within the 5 days or so. I went there Friday, asked if they had them. They said, I was told by the township clerk that they had to check with IT services. I went there, they said probably maybe I'd get them Monday or Tuesday. I couldn't go there Monday. I went there today, early this morning and stuff after the township opened. I was told by one of the employees at the township clerk's office that I could not receive a copy of those until they were reviewed by the board. And my question is, here I submit a Freedom of Information Act and stuff on stuff that's going to be discussed tonight, yet I'm denied the opportunity to look those over beforehand. I believe the Freedom of Information Act gives me access to anything that you people would have here in your packets, and I didn't get that. I felt like I'm being denied that information so that I can look at what's the responses are and prepare any kind of questions I would have for this board. That puts me at a disadvantage. It also puts the public at a disadvantage because it's pretty obviously that I'm the one that's done, myself and other people have asked a lot of questions. Maybe some of those questions that I've asked are ones that they've answered, and I've not had an opportunity to review those things. I don't believe that's correct. I believe that's wrong, and it's very suspicious to me, to say the least. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, moving on to staff reports. 6A, request for approval of a resolution amending the 2017-2018 general fund budget. The financial director, Mr. Dave Manning's here. We appreciate you being here tonight.
No problem. Good evening. With any organization or family, you have to adjust your budgets from time to time to take into account any economic changes within any activity that you're doing. We're amending the general fund budget for some items. Property other is being amended, and that's for paper and other items that is being captured in this one cost center rather than spreading it out over the other cost centers such as paper. The police fund has been reduced $60,000. The increase in the drains reflects a check that went out of the township in March. Community action, we have some adjustments in there. Engineering fees, which is a new item, that's for the TAP grant. And then we received billing on the newsletter that came in late, so we had to adjust that. Some items we could have reduced, but I just didn't feel comfortable at reducing them at this time, such as roads. We have items in the pipeline. I don't know when they're going to get started or when they're going to get finished. So I did not do anything there. Anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns? I sent this out early so that board members would have a chance to review it prior to tonight's meeting.
Ms. Tenenberry?
Yes, I did get it early, but I prefer to have my comments made at a public meeting, so
Sure.
that's why you didn't hear from me. I'm going to vote for this because I know we have to pay our bills.
Correct.
But one of the things in budgeting that I prefer and that I think is better governmental budgeting is to budget it when we're approving the budget. I see several things in here that say have exceeded budget, have to increase one budget for office supplies, which is over budget, legal fees, which are over budget. In my home, if we don't have the money, we don't spend it until we have the money.
I
We don't
understand that.
go over budget, and I think government needs to follow that as well. If we don't have the money, then don't buy it. We can't buy it until we get the money. I don't believe in just, now, if something comes up that is unusual and we didn't know about it before and it's an unexpected expense, then in my mind, that's when we do budget adjustments. But to do budget adjustments just because we want to overspend what we budgeted, in my mind, is not good practice.
I understand you.
And I'm not talking to you, David. I know that
I know.
you just do the paperwork. It's other people
But I think our
who-
attorney would be a little upset if we didn't pay his bill.
I said we need to pay our bills, but
I understand.
whoever had to call the attorney could have waited until the next budget year.
Okay. Thank you for your comments.
Any more comments from the board members? Mr. Frederick?
In my many years here, about this time of the year, there's always an adjustment to the budget.
Correct.
Somebody underspends, somebody overspends. I understand Ms. Tinbury's position that we shouldn't spend it until we've approved the expenditure.
Correct.
So if somebody's a little short on paper, they can't buy it till we approve the increase. Or alternatively, if they've been frugal, till we approve the decrease in their budget. These are not, in my experience, unusual in terms of the areas in which we find them. And so, in my view, we would hope our people would be a little more frugal, but we'll have to live with what we have. Thank you.
Okay, any more comments from board members?
Let me just say that some of these changes reflect expense items that went out in the month of March. So, and the information you have is from February. So I'm updating as we go along.
Okay,
So that's all.
all right. Mr. Steiner?
And Mr. Manning, just per our conversation too, some of these adjustments were made based on the fact that we're now reporting it in a different function or area than it previously. So that also created a few of these adjustments, correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
So, okay, just want to make that clear that it's not always over, under, it's just that some of them were taken out of one fund and it's
Right.
put into a different line item now.
Correct.
We've made adjustments. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, any more discussion? None, I look for a motion.
Mr. Supervisor, I move that we adopt the resolution that amends the 2017-18 general fund budget as presented.
A second.
Okay, motion is supported by Mr. Steiner. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinneberry?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 5-0. Item 6B, request for approval of a resolution amending the 2017-18 special revenue funds budget. Mr. Manning?
Same as with the general fund. Some line items have to be increased and some are decreased and some money was moved around. The fire district expenses have been increased $39,000. 10,000 of this is for the fire truck that needs extensive repairs. Software, something new for the fire department, that's $6,000. Maintenance on computers, that's going to increase about $4,000. And equipment rental is presently over budget, and I increased that by $2,000. On the police fund, property taxes, I reduced that to reflect a modest increase for this current fiscal year that we're in. And the expenses have been decreased to reflect the anticipated costs from the Monroe County Finance Department for sheriff's work. Park fund, I had to raise the general maintenance items by $50,000. However, $50,000 has a decrease in the capital outlay. Contracted services for the library is going to require $25,000 additional expense line item. Michigan Gas is presently near budget, requiring a fund of $4,000 increase. Conference and workshops over budget by $6,000. So once again, this is just going back and adjusting line items within the various funds to reflect changes that were not anticipated at the time the budget was put together. Any questions?
Any comments? No. Seeing none, I look for a motion.
Mr. Supervisor, I move that we adopt the resolution that amends the 2017-28 special revenue funds budgets as presented.
Second.
Motion is supported by Mr. Frederick. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 5-0. Have a safe drive home, Mr. Manning. Thank you. Okay, item 6C, update on SEMCOG and road crisis presentation. Just so everybody knows, SEMCOG is Southeastern Michigan Council of Governments. Al Pryor's been the guy, the representative that kind of goes to these meetings. A lot of them are in Upper Detroit, and it takes a couple hours to get there. But I told him, you know, it's been over a year since he's been attending them, and it'd be nice to get an update, kind of what's been going on, some of the information that we've gathered, and how they really affect us. And they're a really important tool that we do utilize a lot. So I thought it'd be good for him to come here and give us an update. So, Al, go ahead.
First thing that's been good about SEMCOG is they have come down here with reports in terms of our traffic, various reports in terms of our intersections, which ones are more dangerous than others, what can be done, and so on. So they've been very good in terms of that. Some of the meetings that is it what?
Yeah, I didn't think.
Oh, Jody, did you turn that off?
It's on now.
It's on now.
Logan.
So
Ghost.
that's on tape. Some of the other things that we've been involved in the bike trails. SEMCOG is very big into trying to get something going on in terms of biking. And in Monroe County, they're looking to connect on 50 Dundee and Monroe. And I made the suggestion, they're going to take a look at it. And I said, well, why don't you connect Bedford as well? Because we have a street called Lewis Avenue, which has some bike lanes and goes straight up, and we could have 3 communities connected. So that's being looked at as well. So everybody's big into biking, and what's starting to transpire, and we're even going to take a look at it here, is you can have urban biking trails which are very low cost, because really all you do is have signage cost, because you can go in through subdivisions, different roads, and so on. So it's not like we have to spend millions of dollars to accomplish some of these things. So that's one thing SEMCOG's been very good about. The other thing that SEMCOG has done for us is to help us kick off the Lewis Avenue corridor. They came down here, they conducted a seminar for us, they've been in touch, did a report for us and so on, and what we need to do. So they've been extremely helpful. Anytime we call, anything we need, they are there. The other thing that we're taking a look at, and we'll get to the board if you haven't seen it already, are some of the numbers in Monroe County. Exactly what is happening in Monroe County with our population growth, in terms of housing, in terms of jobs, things that we need to do overall in Monroe County, but it also drills down to Bedford Township. And some of those stats are pretty interesting when you take a look at it and where we stand. So also too, I would encourage all the board members, if you need to know something, SEMCOG has an unbelievable wealth of information on their website. They put all these reports on there and so on. They are also involved in water issues. Dave Ewell, he is on that committee in terms of what is also happening in Lake Erie and also the blue economy. Believe it or not, some of the things, it doesn't quite affect us, but I did not realize we had sturgeon in Dundee and pike. And yeah, it's crazy. Lamar was at the meeting, they were showing the picture. Was it, I think it was pike, wasn't it? Those things are pretty big. But Dave's been instrumental in working on that, along with Bob Clark is involved as well. So they have just been a wealth of information for us and have been extremely helpful, and I feel it's a great organization that we can turn to at any time and get an answer. So, and we will continue to utilize them. The other thing is get on the website. Today they announced the app for the Park Finder. There's about 2,600 parks they have listed. So if you get the app and you're going in Bedford, you can pull up that app and it's going to show the different parks that we have. If you go up to Detroit, it'll show you the different parks they have. So that's something that they worked on for a long time. The other thing, we were at the meeting last week, and you have in your packet, and I'm not going to go through every number, but the road crisis in Michigan is definitely real. And when we hear reports that, yes, the state's spending another $175 million, when SEMCOG broke that down, it's quite interesting to really how little we get and how shocking it is that you would think $175 million goes a lot farther, but it doesn't. And we're currently spending as a state about $400 million a year in terms of roads. SEMCOG, in terms of their studies, and you'll see that, and they have our roads rated good, poor, fair, and so on. They're advocating, I believe we need to spend about $1.6 billion a year because these roads need to be redone. We've patched, we've resurfaced, but we've never replaced these roads. And they are trying to look at different ways that possibly we could maybe fund these roads in the future. They're lobbying the state to do more. All I know is in Monroe County, and I think when we drive around here, we should be very thankful that our roads are actually in pretty good shape. Because when Mark Hackle gets up there from Macomb County and says he's got a $200 million problem, ours looks very small in comparison to what he's going through. So we have actually done pretty well in Monroe County in what we're trying to accomplish. But SEMCOG is very involved in terms of the road issue, and if you go through that, or if you have people who call you, it'll break it down per capita to what's being spent in Monroe County, and it's not an outrageous amount, put it that way. So, so those are just a few items, Any questions, or?
Anybody have any comments or questions? Ms. Tinneberry?
Do you know which one of these, or do you know which of these counties on this first page, distribution of state road funds by county, do you know which ones have state contracts?
I couldn't tell you that. Are you talking about like to take care of I-75 and 23?
Right.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you that. I could get you that information, though.
I think that's important to know, because if Monroe County did not have a state contract, it would be much better for Bedford.
Oh.
And, you know, I mean, we all know that they have to, on snow plowing, they have to stay out there, you know, until it stops snowing, and so we get nothing for the local, you know, roads, and same way with pothole patching and whatever. So, I mean, it's, in my opinion, it would be better if we lobbied the County Road Commission to get rid of that state contract, so that the money that they receive would be better spent on local taxpayers. And then, I had one other question. The, on page 4, do you have the same thing?
Yeah.
The 10% for urban roads, that's coming from this extra 175,000, or what? You know, the MTA sent out that email that there's definitely going to be another 175,000. Does this, because cities and villages get their own funding, they don't go
Right.
through the County Road Commission, so is this additional money?
I do believe it is. So I will double check that for you, though, but I do believe that's what it is. As I said, when they're talking about this extra money, excuse me, it's not going that far. Yeah,
No, I understand.
Right, so,
175 million doesn't go that far.
right. Wish it did. So, but you're right on the contract. And I know I've been to a couple board meetings and so on up at the Road Commission, and that issue's been discussed.
Oh, it has?
Yeah, they've talked about that. And what would it look like if you didn't have that contract?
It'd look much better for us.
Right,
So next time you go, lobby in favor of getting rid of it.
will do.
Thank you.
Any more comments for Mr. Pryor? If not, I appreciate you being here tonight, giving us the update. Okay, we have no old business. Under new business, 8A, request for approval of vouchers for payment. Mr. Francis?
Excuse me. I move that we approve the following vouchers for payment. In the general fund, a total of $57,494.59. For the fire district fund, $13,611.43. For the police millage fund, $21.88. For the park fund, it's $11,388.53. For the transit system fund, it's $14,856 even. For the library fund, it's $766.33. For the water revenue fund, it's $5,300 even. For the Enchanted Forest Special Assessment District, it's $162.86. For Canterbury Forest Special Assessment District, it's $37.14. For the Downtown Development Authority Fund, it is $6,247.63. For the Sewer Operation and Maintenance Fund, it's $5,792.82. And for the Trust and Agency Fund, it's $550.90 for a grand total of $116,230.11.
We have a motion.
A second.
Motion supported by Mr. Steiner. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinneberry?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 5-0. Item 8B, request for approval of the emergency Jake break ordinance. Mr. Goldsmith, if you want to kind of get into this ordinance?
Sure. Our residents in the unincorporated village of Samaria have from time to time experienced problems with truck traffic through that area on M151, or also known as Samaria Road, with semis and trucks using what's commonly referred to as Jake brakes, their engine compression brakes. And so this ordinance was drafted, and if adopted by the board, would prevent the use of Jake brakes where the prohibition is posted by signage. To my knowledge, the main area right now is the village of Samaria. There may be other areas within our township on the approved truck routes, which we've approved by ordinance number 98, that could also be posted. This is an ordinance that can only be enforced by certified police officers, not by our ordinance officers, and only a violation that's committed in their presence. So if there's a continuing problem and we have a sheriff's deputy alerted to that fact and they're out there and Jake brakes are being used for other than emergency purposes, they can be written a civil infraction citation, and the penalty is described in the ordinance. So it's designed to assist our residents where Jake brake use is occurring, where it doesn't need to occur or shouldn't occur, which causes excessive noise by virtue of the type of brakes that they are. So that's it. Again, not to be enforced by our ordinance officers, only by certified police officers on the truck routes where truck traffic is occurring, when the offense is committed in their presence, and it has to be prohibited by signage. So the board would have to decide where the signs would be posted, then coordinate that with the road commission for the posting of those signs in connection with our truck routes.
Okay. Questions for board members? Ms. Tinneberry?
I'm all for this, but my own curiosity, just what's the purpose of a Jake brake?
A Jake brake uses engine compression to slow the vehicle as opposed to brake. It saves the life of brakes. And so you're basically downshifting the transmission. The compressed air comes out the exhaust, creates a loud noise. And if you've ever been on the turnpike, maybe at a rest area, sometimes you'll hear it as trucks come into the loud noise as trucks come into the rest area where they're downshifting, using their engine to help stop or slow the vehicle.
Okay.
Wow, Phil, I thought you just knew law. You're really well-rounded over there, wow.
I'm an old guy.
Very detailed, Mr. Steiner.
Good job, Mr. Gold. When did you drive a truck? Years ago, I drove one, but Jake brakes, Ms. Tinberry, I mean, really it's a safety feature almost for some of the big trucks that, as Mr. Goldsmith stated, there's a lever that they pull on the column usually, and as he said, it pulls the compression from the engine, and when that exhaust comes rushing through those 6-inch stacks, I'm not going to imitate it, but it's a loud sound, it's a ba 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 ba, but I mean really loud, and especially I could see it in Samaria. If people are sleeping, especially, I mean it's annoying anytime, but if you're sleeping, it'll jar you right out of bed. It's that loud.
What's it sound like again?
Well,
You heard
no.
But
if it's a safety thing, can they help it?
well, yes, because what they do is let's just say that somebody runs out in the road in front of them. Instead of just slamming on the brakes, they can pull that lever, and that compression will just pull that engine back just like this.
Oh,
And they'll still apply their brakes, but it helps the engine with that compression reduction to slow the whole vehicle down by engine. And it, of course, it transfers through the transmission and everything else.
okay, thank you.
But I just want to say that, if we approve this, which I'm positive we will, I don't have a problem with the enforcement on our truck route, period, in Bedford. This is a local community. Generally, those Jake brakes are used at a higher speed. They can be used at lower speed, but generally a lot of your higher speeds to slow down. So if there's trucks going that fast in Bedford Township, that's not a good thing anyway. So I wouldn't have a problem if this board decided to put it on all truck routes, period.
And you
will say this,
can,
we
it
won't-
just has to be posted.
Right.
So that the operators of the
They know.
trucks are aware and they know. I suspect what's happening in some areas, we have the railroad tracks there. And that's more than likely where they're being utilized to slow the vehicle down at the railroad track, which I'm sure disturbs the people in our post office there and other.
Those are the only calls we get from some area residents, so I guess if we do get a call outside of there, we could maybe amend it, but.
Well, it doesn't need to be amended. All you have to do is post it. If you
Oh,
get
okay.
a call.
So you just post it
Right.
going forward, okay. Mr. Fredericks?
Well, this isn't going to make the farmers very happy, because they have diesel trucks too. And so I suspect that we'll have to be a little bit sensitive to our farmers who are taking their products to market. They're taking it to the tomato shacks, or they're taking it to the elevator. And I suspect that most of this is on the eastbound truck traffic as they're going through some area and they come up to the railroad tracks there. They probably plunk it a little bit. But I don't have a problem putting it in. It's another one of these feel-good ordinances that we have to work diligently with the road commission. We'll have to work diligently with the sheriff's department in order to affect it. So just we have to understand that this is going to be a tough enforcement issue. Thank you.
Okay, any more comments? Seeing none, I look for a motion.
Mr. Supervisor, I make a motion to approve the Bedford Township ordinance proposal, the emergency brake/Jake brake ordinance as presented.
Support.
Okay, motion supported by Ms. Tinneberry, discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni.
Aye, and the motion passed 5-0. Bill, thanks for all the work on that, appreciate it. All right, item 8C, request for final PUD approval for Montri Estates LLC for a 61-unit condominium project. Mr. Frederick?
Actually, 8D would come before C, but that's okay. We'll do them both at once. Mr. Montri, you're here? This is a development that's on Stearns Road between Jackman and Douglas Road on the north side, essentially across from Silo Meadows. This project was looked at intensively by the Planning Commission for several reasons. One, there's Bragdon Ditch goes through the front part of this proposed area, and only a portion of the two parcels will be rezoned, and only a portion of the parcels essentially will be a PUD. And then because of the Bragdon Ditch, Bragdon Drain, the MDEQ is involved in this particular thing. So the questions by the Planning Commission involved obviously just the one entrance, but in view of the change of requirements to 100 units before you have to have two entrances, one entrance is approved. We were concerned a little bit with the floodplains. We were concerned a little bit with the creek. We've been satisfied by the engineers that the proposal from MDEQ with respect to I use the word bridge, it's really just a drive over the culvert, has been satisfied with MDEQ. So the first thing, in fact, we have to do is to rezone the portions of the properties, both of them, from R2A to PUD. So, Mr. Supervisor, I move that a portion of parcel numbers 5802, 028, 051, 00, and 5802, 028, 052, 00 be rezoned from R2A, single-family residential, to PUD, planned unit development for the following reasons. The parcels noted will be developed into a 61-unit site condominium project. The project will be developed as a PUD planned unit development, and the density of the proposed units is not substantially different from R2A single-family residential zoning districts. The rezoning is consistent with the township master plan for the area. The rezoning is consistent with single-family residential uses in the area. The Township Planning Commission recommended approval of the rezoning, and the Monroe County Planning Commission has recommended approval of the rezoning. That's my motion.
Support.
Okay, motion is supported by Ms. Tinnevery. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 5-0.
The next motion relates to approval of the PUD, the planned unit development, and approval of the final site plan for Phase 1 of the PUD. You've had documents which demonstrate where the first phase will be. So, Mr. Supervisor, I move final approval of the Montrose Estates PUD, the planned unit development, and approval of the final site plan for Phase 1 of the PUD on a portion of parcel numbers 5802, 028, 05100, and 5802, 028, 05200, located on the north side of Stearns Road between Douglas and Jackman Roads, provided the developer complying with all issues noted in the letters from Manick and Smith Group, the Monroe County Drain Commissioner, the Monroe County Road Commission, and the Bedford Fire Department. The developer obtains all required and necessary permits from the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality regarding wetlands, floodplain intrusions, road crossings on or over adjacent to the wetlands or floodplains on the parcels, including approval of the Monroe County Drain Commissioner of such permits. The developer worked with the township clerk to establish a special assessment district for street lighting in Phase 1. The developer installs sidewalks as set forth in the site plan, and the PUD agreement and master deed delivered to Township Council for review and approval. Mr. Supervisor, that's my motion.
Okay.
Support.
Motion is supported by Ms. Tinnevery. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 5-0. Okay, item 8E. I got ahead of myself there. Discussion of the questions and the response to the questions regarding the township contract with the Monroe County Sheriff's Department. Okay, so we've had a small little group that has met for a couple of months on the Sheriff's Department's contract. We've looked at, well, what we've done is we picked up the pieces from the committee that was disbanded. And in doing that, we went through some of the stuff they had, and in the end, we wanted to look at the cost of our own Sheriff's Department compared to what we have now. We've looked at the contract through and through, and in that, we came up with a bunch of questions. We sent the questions on to get responses via email, and we received them about a week ago. And at that point, we were going to go through the responses, take our time, come up with some more questions, and then send them back. Well, in the meantime, the questions did get FOIA'd. So we thought, you know what, at this point, why don't we just give all the information that we've gotten up to this point, because we've asked for updates from Ms. Tinnevery, and ask the board how you would like to go forward. So my suggestion at this point is we have a ton of information here from questions we've asked, responses we received. We've got a lot of information here on what it would be like to have our own department, the cost. So I'm suggesting that we take the information we've gotten and we schedule. I contacted the Sheriff's Department and told them we needed them to be at a committee of the whole meeting. They said just let them know. They'd be more than willing to meet and go over the questions and what we've done and come up with. At this point, I think, you know, the board, or not the board, but our group felt kind of pressured to say, hey, what are you guys doing? So we thought it's best to just put the information out there to the trustees and ask how you'd like to proceed as a board. And like I said, if Paul or Lamar would like to add anything that I'm missing, but, you know, somebody had to pick up the pieces, and we decided to do it. It's been a lot of work and time. We've seeked out other professionals like Dean Ansel and gotten a lot of good information from him. I mean, the guy's worked his tail off for a lot of this, and so has Logan. He's brought a lot of good information forward, and I appreciate that as citizens. You know, you don't have to do that, and so I appreciate that. But that's my thought. You know, we can sit here and discuss it, but to be quite honest with you, this little group we have isn't prepared. We just, like I said, wanted to give the information to you and see how you want to proceed. And like I said, I think the best bet is to have a committee of the whole, set the date tonight, invite the sheriff's department to come, and then we do it at that point. So I open it up for discussion. And if I missed anything, Mr. Francis, feel free to jump in, or Mr. Frederick. I mean, but that's kind of
Well,
where we're at, you know.
yes, you've asked me to jump in, so I'll go in the Shark Tank. The Law Enforcement Committee, unfortunately, was disbanded, in my view, before they completed their work. But that's my opinion. It was before I even came along. In conversations with the supervisor, it seemed that we should kind of pick up the pieces and do a serious, and this is not to say that the Law Enforcement Committee didn't do a serious study, but do some serious work in order to determine how the township should go forward. Obviously, the questions are twofold. One, do we stay with the Sheriff's Department with all its warts and issues? Do we consider having our own police department and all the costs, liabilities, and issues associated with that? So we started putting some information together, asking, as you said, Mr. Supervisor, some specialists and some folks who have information in this area so that we could at least start the process. But before we spend any more time ourselves, we thought we should bring what we have, and if you want, I got another notebook full of stuff. We should deliver a package of information to the board, let the board look at it, study it, chew it up, do whatever they think they need, and give us some direction going forward. And I agree with you that we should do this at a committee of the whole and spend only our time on this issue. That's my view. Thank you.
Any more comments or questions, suggestions? We're open to any. Mr. Francis?
There's a lot of information in the little few pages that were in the packet, and just to highlight what they are is the first 4 pages are different levels of staffing. If we were to have our own independent law enforcement department, if you will, police force. And like the first one has a total of 18 people that we'd be paying. The second one has 15 people that would be on staff. The third one has also 15, but a different configuration of officers and lieutenants and sergeants and the like. And then the fourth one has 18 people. And as I recall, the law enforcement committee that was disbanded last July, I thought they came to some sort of consensus that if we were to do our own, let's do it right. And if we were to do that, how many people would you need? And they came up with a number of 18, and it's shown there. these are mainly set apart so that we can get some idea of what kinds of expenses do you deal with when you have a police force, regardless of the size. So that's what these numbers are. The only thing that changes would be the salary issues, and if there's some uniforms in there, that would fluctuate with the number of people that you need to have in uniforms. But other than that, the expenses are basically the same types of expenses. We asked Dean Ansel's input because he's professional, has worked in law enforcement for a long time, back when Abe Lincoln was in office, I think. And he's very helpful because he could, well, you need this, you need that, you need this. And we worked all of those in. That was one component. This is some ideas of what it might cost us were we to select one of these levels of staff. We also have.
I would interject, Paul, I have 5 or 6 or 7 other ones too.
Oh, I know, there's a lot more. Part of the review, and it really isn't that little ad hoc group, if you call, it really isn't their charge to come in with a recommendation. It was just their charge to do some study, get some information, bring it back to the board, as Lamar mentioned, and let the board decide, well, what avenue do we want to pursue? All of them? None of them? One of them? Tell us where to go, and then we can flesh it out in some more, maybe some more detail. So that's what our idea is. As far as discussing the questions sent to the Sheriff's Department, we have answers back, and frankly, I'm not troubled, but I'm struggling a bit with, did the answer really answer the question that I asked, or, well, that we asked? And in most of the cases, it did. And, but it takes some time to digest those, because there were a lot of questions asked. It's mainly our request of the Sheriff's Department to help us understand what our contract says. Different people might interpret different words differently. And it's been in place for a long time, back in the, 90s, or even prior to that, they had a contract. And it's evolved over the years, but essentially it's been basically the same type of a contract. Once we find out and can come to some agreement with what it says and what we think we're getting from it, then you go on. Do you want to modify the contract, add for additions, take something out, do something with it? At least that's one of the areas we wanted to review. So I think it would be totally appropriate to have a committee of the whole meeting where the only issue on the docket that night would be to talk about any of these issues. And it would be a no holds barred discussion. Any question is valid. We're trying to do what we were all charged to do by the voters, is to do the best for our citizens. We need to take our time and do it right rather than do it fast. So I'll get off my soapbox.
Okay, any more other comments? Ms. Tinderberry?
Well, I agree with the committee of the whole objective, but from what I see, it's going to take more than one committee of the whole. This is a very serious decision, and it's not going to be handled by any subcommittee. It can only be handled by the township board, because whatever recommendation comes back is going to need to have a lot of discussion by the decision makers. I believe that we should have one specifically about the questions that were sent to the Sheriff's Department. I agree somewhat with Mr. Francis, but in reading this and not having been involved in any of the other discussion, I have read the sheriff's contract before, and I have disagreed with many of the things in there, but now reading the answers from the sheriff, there are still some very cloudy and confusing, in my mind, answers to the questions that were asked. So I think we need one, at least one, to discuss the questions sent to the sheriff, and maybe how we can modify the contract if they are willing to do that to any extent, so that it better fits Bedford Township and not just a broad county contract. And then, not knowing, maybe we will stay with the sheriff's department and modify the contract, but before that's done, we should also look at the statistics and the numbers and all the research and work that has been done by Mr. Ansel and Mr. Frederick and whoever else participated in that. Because I think that in order to do a fair job for the citizens, we have to look at both sides. As I said before, we have to assess and scrutinize contracts that we have to make sure that they best fit the needs of our community. So I'm all for the committee of the whole, the sooner the better, because I think that we're going to need more than one committee of the whole meeting.
Are you anybody prepared to set a date tonight, or do you want to shoot some emails out or kind of try to figure out a date, or you want to set a date? Is there a time that you can do it? Anybody?
Well, I mean, for Rick's
You want to
schedule, I
go
think
2
we need
weeks
to.
out? It's got to be evening.
Yeah, Paul, I would say, do the best you can on a schedule. You know my schedule is very difficult. Number one, just trying to even get back here from Detroit is a monster. Many nights it takes over 2 hours to get back here. So I would say if you shot for a 6 o'clock some evening, I can do my darndest to try to get out of Detroit. And because I know that a lot of people would like to start before 7 p.m. I agree that with Ms. Tinberry, I think we should have two separate functions here. One is to go through the questions and responses. Some things we may agree with wholeheartedly. Other things we may say it's a little gray, and after discussion with the sheriff's department, we may agree with them, or we might disagree still. And those would be the areas that we might have a new question, or what we might want to make with some kind of potential adjustments to the contract if necessary. And then the second side of that, of course, is going through the numbers and the recommendations and what it would cost if we did have our own department at various levels.
Okay. Mr. Francis?
You had mentioned earlier of inviting the sheriff's department. I think it's a little premature to invite them right now. I think our board needs to look at the questions asked and the answers given, and we might have some follow-up questions. I would set the meeting with the sheriff when we talk about those follow-up questions, rather than before. And I wouldn't have them here at all when we're talking about the other issues on the numbers that we've projected as far as running our own. We need them to talk about the contract that they're a party to, as are we.
Right.
Well, we can definitely set a date then.
Could I-
Ms. Tinberry, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I agree with Paul, but it will be an open meeting, and so if he or any of the deputies want to come and sit in on it and listen to our discussion, that, wouldn't be, but for your purpose to invite him, I totally agree. Well, I mean, in terms of trying to accommodate Rick, could we shoot for like a 7 a.m. on Saturday morning and limit it to 2 hours? I mean, the good cartoons don't start till 9, so you'd be home in time, Paul.
I'm all for that. Yeah.
I mean, I'd be
I love
willing-
Saturday morning meetings. I'll bring the Tim Hortons donuts.
Amen to that.
Yeah,
Got coffee,
they'll
too.
be.
7 o'clock's the
They'll be-
problem, though.
They'll be 6 days
No,
old.
it
so-
isn't.
Well, Paul,
Get to
what
bed the night
cartoons do you
before.
watch?
Pardon me? Pardon
And
me?
you don't have to
I
come
said,
from
what
Detroit
cartoons
then.
do you watch?
I come to the meeting, I don't need to see cartoons. Sorry. I think Saturday's a good idea.
He wasn't talking about me.
No. No, I think Saturday's good. This is an important issue.
Yeah.
This is something that we've been thrashing around with for years. There've been 2 more of these in my recollection in the last 20 years or more where they've done a similar type of review of what our needs are. At some point in time, our residents are going to have to come to grips with what level of law enforcement do we want and are we willing to pay for? because willing to pay for is a big issue. You'll notice some of these numbers are big numbers, like the one that the Law Enforcement Committee was, their wish list was 18 people. That's just under $2 million a year. We can't afford that without new money. Plain and simple. And the other numbers, we can't afford even at a reduced one without some additional funding. So we need to come to grips with this. This is an important issue. I think it's important to all the residents. Some realize it and some don't. But that's why we're here, is to get their input and make some decision that will benefit all of them.
Okay,
Pick a
so
date.
let's say Saturday, April 14th.
I will be gone.
Okay, let's
That's a
plan.
good date.
I will be in Phoenix.
Okay, let's.
Somebody-
We'll meet there.
Somebody's doing. It's all right, pay your own way.
Be nicer.
What about Saturday, April 7th? Do you want to do this soon?
Yeah, that's fine with me, I can,
Trudy will be back.
this weekend?
Trudy won't be back?
I don't think, isn't that this Saturday?
Okay, let's skip this Saturday. Let's go out to
21st?
the 21st.
Gives you some time.
I can do that.
Saturday, April 21st. Are we talking 7 o'clock?
I am.
You get up that early, Nancy?
You might be. I'm not talking 7.
Well, it's going to, this is, Paul has already said it several times. This is a serious issue. I don't want to say 2 hours and we're done. If it takes 3, it takes 3. If it takes an hour and a half, it's an hour and a half. I think what we should talk about is if we're going to start at 7, it goes until we're done. And if you want to put a time limit on it, put 3 hours. That way, we really need to spend some time on this. Back when I was a supervisor, we had a law enforcement committee that had 20 people on it. And they came up with costs similar to this, but it was a little bit different because we didn't have a township hall for their facility. So there was a facilities issue. But those cost things, I think we can look at the second meeting. The first one is, let's go over these answers, make sure we understand what the contract says, make sure what we agree or disagree, and where we disagree. And then we can talk about numbers.
Okay, so Saturday, April 21st, 7 o'clock.
Can we do it 8 for Paul? I mean, really?
All right.
Can you make 8, Paul?
Well, some people up here can't sleep. Is that why they wanted it 7? It's the only few days I get to sleep in, so I don't care. Have it whenever you want.
April
time you want, Bob?
21st,
You wanna
7
do 8?
o'clock.
Better than 7.
Meeting of the whole,
Okay, let's do 8 o'clock. That's my Bible study.
8 o'clock.
I
Okay,
guess
now
I'll miss
we're at
my
8
Bible
o'clock.
study for this.
Day's half over.
Yeah.
I missed
You hear that?
that.
Okay, 8 o'clock, so moving on. Okay. Item 8F, request for approval of the Bedford Township Teamsters Union contract. Okay, myself, Mr. Frederick, and Phil Nance, the labor attorney, spent some time going through the contract, made some suggestions. We met with the Teamsters Labor Union and the Stewart, Pat Thatcher from the maintenance garage, and we came up with a few changes. Does anybody have any questions on the packet of the changes? Some of the things that were changed was longevity pay. We took that out totally, but in replacing that, we went with 3.5% for year 1, 2% year 2, and 2% for year 3. What that 1.5% extra did on top of the 2 was basically covered the longevity pay. Because, you know, some of these guys got $700 a year. So that's where where that came in. Another thing we looked at was the overtime setup. We were concerned with some of the weekends being double time and a half. So we went with time and a half. The employee straight time regular pay shall be paid for hours actually worked in excess of 8 hours in one work day or in excess of 40 hours in one work week. Saturday, time and a half, The employee straight time regular rate plus time and a half is for Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays would be double time. The employee straight time, obviously you know what that is. So those were some of the things that were changed instead of just the straight double time and a half. Another thing we looked at was the clothing allowance. We took the clothing allowance away because there is no uniform, but we did offer to pay for safety boots as far as steel toe, and there will be an allowance of $200 upon receipt for those, up to $200. That basically is like a steel toe boot.
Don't we already pay for that?
Yes, but it was raised to 200 because we took away the clothing allowance, and 200 is a decent amount, and if you get a good boot, they typically last you a few years, so depends on how much they use them. Some of the other things we talked about was vacation time. We had some employees that would take a lot of vacation in a row in the summertime, and that's really when we need the maintenance guys. And so we looked at that a little bit to kind of restrict it to 2 weeks in a row. No more than 2 weeks in a row, I think it was something that said, during the period time between April 1st and October 31st each year, vacation time shall not be granted to an employer for more than 2 weeks, and no more than one employee shall be granted vacation time off at that time. So that kind of covered that. Then we talked about probationary members, non-probationary full-time employees are eligible to participate in the township-wide retirement program. Specific terms and conditions, enrollment and participation requirements, and plan design components. So that was deleted because they cannot participate in that. So that section was deleted. We revised section 24.1. The union contract made it clear that the lifetime insurance benefit is not effective until completion of the probationary period or its extension. Effective the first full policy premium month following completion of a new higher probationary period or extension, therefore, the township agrees to pay the full premium for the term life insurance for regular full-time employees in the amount of $20,000. I think before Lamar, it was 30 days they would get it, but now we're saying you have to make it through the probationary period before you're eligible for something like that.
We just conformed several areas where it was inconsistent with respect to the probationary period for the new hire. Sometimes they were receiving benefits before they completed the probationary period, so it was just conformed that after completion of the probationary period, certain benefits then accrued.
We revised section 28.1. The eligibility for the township paid sick leave benefit is restricted to full-time employees effective the first full calendar of each month following completion of the new higher probationary period. For extension thereof, paid sick leave shall be earned thereafter at the rotation of 1 day for each full calendar month of active employment. And so, we deleted the section with contract uniforms, and deleted longevity pay. Any questions or comments, concerns? Anything I missed, Mr. Frederick?
No. Mr. Supervisor.
Well, I think Mr. Francis had a
Oh,
comment real quick.
go ahead.
You want to comment?
You led off with talking about reducing the longevity pay by bumping the wage increase by, what, 1.5% or over the usual 2%?
Yes.
But that only hits it for 1 year. Second year, they've lost that.
You never lose that 1.5% though, that we gave them. That 1.5%'s always there. So that's the way we look at it. If we give them 3.5% today, next year that, they still have that 3.5%. Normally, they would have only gotten 2%, so you never lose that 1.5 extra percent we're giving you.
Well, you're saying that that's 3.5% every year?
Oh, no, it's 3.5% one time for year one, year two is 2, years 3 is 2.
Right.
But that 3.5% would have normally been 2%, so that 1.5% never goes away.
You're just compounding
Yeah.
a 2% on the original 3.5.
Ms. Tinneberry?
The email said they've ratified it, so obviously they're not upset with it.
No, they were happy with it,
Yeah.
because they understood that every year they're gonna get roughly, it was about $600 a year extra with that 1.5%.
Right.
Mr. Supervisor, what I wanted to say is that the union's already ratified the contract, so it's up to us.
That's what I just said.
Any more comments? Are you satisfied with that, or?
I'm fine, I'm fine.
But what I tried to do is, they get the same benefits as the township employees. And I don't want it to be a thing of, you know, why do they get $700 longevity pay when there's employees at the township, been there 20-something years, they don't get it. You know, we offer them a decent wage and a good benefit package and good insurance, and, you know, I don't know why the longevity pay is in there if they're trying to be on the same level, you know, as our employees here, so. If no further discussion or questions, I look for a motion.
Mr. Supervisor, I move that the township approve the tentative agreement for the new union contract with the changes that were noted in the memorandum, and to approve the collective bargaining agreement with the changes.
Second.
Okay, motion is supported by Mr. Steiner. Discussion? Mr. Steiner?
Mr. Frederick, did you just want to add, as ratified by the employees?
That's fine.
Bargaining unit?
As ratified by the bargaining unit.
Okay. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 5-0. Okay, the item I added, if we would like to continue forward, it's 8G. It's the quote from IT Right. Basically, we weren't able to upgrade Mr. Redmond's computer because he wasn't here in the time when we did this. So it's that simple. I'm just looking to update his computer as the same as we did everybody else's. I have a little memo here for Mr. Officer Cecil. I'm requesting you approve the request for a new computer tower for Officer Tom Redmond. When the rest of the township was upgraded, Tom was only a temporary member of this department, and thus no computer upgrade was provided to him. This needs to be corrected so that he has the same access to the rest of the departments have. He currently only has 2010 Office Word and not the 2016 version we use in the Ordinance Department. Due to this, he is unable to access our updating filing system. He doesn't need a monitor or keyboard, just the tower. Thank you in advance. So, any comments, Ms. Tinderberry?
Is it in the budget?
Yes, that's what I was going to ask. Is it in the budget?
Paul, is it in the budget? I don't know. I don't know.
Well, if it isn't in their budget, we can transfer it over from your budget, because we shouldn't be having spending more money, but I will move that we approve the computer for the Ordinance Department. It doesn't belong to Mr. Redmond, but for the Ordinance Department at $879 for the equipment and the Microsoft Office upgrade.
Second.
Okay, motion supported. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Just one question. Could we investigate as to why we cannot get a site license for this software? If we're paying individual licenses for every computer, it seems to me we should be looking at a site license, which says we can put it on any computer within our system. I guess maybe the clerk or whoever's the IT person might want to look at that to see if, you know, if we're talking $229 per computer and there's 4 of them in this office, there's $1,000, and maybe, I don't know what it is in the rest of the township, but maybe we should be seeing if it's possible to get a site license, because I don't know the answer to that, but our IT
I don't think it is possible. I don't think Microsoft does it that way. That's why they're made multimillionaires of all the stockholders there, because they do that. They
We had one
restrict it.
we had one at Owens Corning. I know we had a site license. I know that my little company that I represented before they sold out, that they had a site license. So I'm just asking the question we might want to look.
No, it's a good question.
I don't know the answer.
I'm sure the clerk's department will look into that.
Mr. Supervisor.
Mr. Steiner?
Just a comment, that could be a discounted licensing based on a group unit like this. That particular office package, to go out and buy one, you or me, that could run around $480 to $500. So this could be tied into a network licensing for us.
That's what I'm thinking, because I bought Windows 10 and I could put it on 3 different computers.
Oh, but this isn't your Windows application.
I know that,
This
but
is the
I don't know the
opposite.
answer.
Right.
I'm just suggesting that we might want to look into that.
That's a good suggestion.
Yeah, because each one has to have its own unique license identifier per
I agree
per
with
unit, so,
It's set in the motherboard.
right.
Okay. All right. We have a motion and supported. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 5-0. Okay, moving on to comments from the public. Comments limited to 5 minutes for each individual. Come on up.
Good evening, Dean Ansel, 2005 Center Drive. In hearing the discussion tonight, there's been a ton of man-hours poured into this thing. I need to put out there publicly, I do not have a personal agenda. It's been echoed in the community that I have a personal agenda. I don't have a personal agenda. When I was given the task or taken on the task on this law enforcement committee a year and a half ago, seeing what took place in that committee, seeing the political arena that I had jumped into and the politics that were being played in that committee, and I can back them. I'm not just up here shooting my mouth off. It was nothing but politics. I hate politics. I hate politicians. If you're a politician, I hate you. Sorry, okay? You're up here to do a job for us, and if you don't do it, I got numbers I'm gonna shove right down your throat. And you people had better wake up, because I'm not playing games no more. I'm tired of government waste, period. I'm tired of politics. I'm tired of the political game. I'm going to read you some numbers right now. Take it for what it's worth. They're in black and white. They're not my numbers. They're the county numbers. They're your numbers, the township's numbers. Out of the 2018 budget, 10 deputies cost us $1,085,000. Now you compare that to 10 local police officers, which I'm a police officer. I'm a chief of police. I do budgets. The numbers I'm giving you are based off the numbers I use every year. They're factual numbers. We can do, if you compare 10 contract deputies to 10 local police officers, Bedford Township police officers, the cost of 10 local police officers is $487,000. That's a difference of $597,000, almost $600,000. I might be $100,000 off, but I'm not $600,000 off. Okay, the numbers are staggering. I was in one of these meetings where I said that by these numbers we've got, you could save $136,000. I was told in this meeting that $136,000 wouldn't turn a head on this board. I rolled my chair back and I said, I sit up here and listen to you people argue about a $1,000 snowplow whether we get an 8-foot or a 9-foot, over $1,000, and you're telling me $136,000 is nothing? I'm gonna have your job. It's nuts, it's ludicrous, okay? I have no personal agenda, but you're not gonna waste my tax dollars because of politics. It ain't gonna happen. I'm tired of it. I'm gonna give you two copies of what I've got, because I don't know what you've got and what you don't have. These are just a few of what I have. So you guys can digest these. If you two have any questions, you've both got my phone number, call me, okay? You're gonna probably be told these aren't good numbers, there's no way you can do this. I'll prove it. I got it, no problem. I'm very confident, okay? So I'll give you two a copy of these before I get out of here. Next thing I wanna know from our township attorney, I gotta clear the air on this. Is it illegal for 3 board members to get information from a township person?
All right, this is, we'll
You guys aren't allowed to answer questions?
we'll get to it in his, we'll let him comment in the end.
Okay, that's just a question I have.
But-
I need to get clarified because the clerk has threatened me several times. I've reached out to 2 different attorneys. I'm being told it's not illegal what we're doing. If it's illegal, I need to know, and I need to know a yes or no answer. Something was mentioned here tonight, and I need somebody to clarify this for me. Mr. Manning said that the police fund was reduced by $60,000, but then in his next report, he said there was a modest increase in the share for administration, and I think he said fees, but don't hold me on that. Is that a 5-minute timer?
Time is up.
Okay.
Any more comments from the public?
Good evening, Logan Tisdale, Brandywine Street, Temperance, Michigan. This is a police investigation, even though I'm not a police officer anymore. This is hours and hours and hours and hours of work going through numbers supplied by the Sheriff's Department. And a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of anger. Because this isn't just about figuring out our own police department, this is finding out what's happening. My findings look like we're getting a lot of we're paying so much money over and above what we should be paying, it's staggering. We paid $150,000 last year for other hours. Don't even know what that is. We paid, according to the last one they gave us on these things that they give us a monthly contract, they gave us a summary report, a revised one, that showed that they only work like 16,600 hours out of 18,000 hours. They're supposed to give us 18,000 hours for the year. That's 10 contract officers working 1,800 hours. That's minus the 35 days or 280 hours that we give them for their sick leave, annual leave, personal leave, and training. They need to give us 18,000 hours. They didn't do that according to what they sent us. They said they gave us 16,601 hours. That cost us $60,000 that we didn't get anything for it, but they charged us for it. 60 grand. That's not a drop in the bucket. And $150,000 for other hours, which we don't even know what they are. And that's one of the questions you asked them, what's other hours? This is mind-boggling. This doesn't just affect Bedford Township. If you think that only affects 33,000 people, it does not. It affects all of Monroe County. If they're overbilling us, and they're knowingly doing it, this affects the whole county. This isn't just Bedford Township. So what you decide here doesn't just affect the 33 people or 33,000 people in this vicinity, it affects the whole county. And you know what? It needs to be investigated. This is serious stuff. You just kind of write off, well, it's a contract problem. It's more than a contract problem. And I get tired of hearing it's a contract problem. There needs to be serious investigation in what's going on. And the answers we get are convoluted. My guess is that's what they are. Because that's what they're doing every month. They sent us 19,000 hours they worked last year. They had a detective work 1,001 hours. He's not a contract officer, but yet his hours are on there. Why are they doing that? Then the next time, it's not as many people, but it's still shy of the 18,000 hours. You need to find out what's going on. This is serious stuff. I've told you that right from the beginning. I've come here so many times and sat here through so many meetings. I have a hard time driving by here without my car wanting to pull in here. And the reason is because I'm concerned about the citizens of this township. That's why I'm here. I don't have an agenda. I'm too old to have an agenda. My agenda is to make sure that the people in this township get fair treatment and that we see the facts as they are, not as what we want them to see or politically as we want them to see, but as they are. And I want to see the people in this community in Monroe County get served properly too. I spent 23 years as a police officer, 8 years in this county here working as a detective. I know what goes on here. And then we're not getting the service. We're not even getting the service when they're working out on the road. One officer went 39 hours without writing one single traffic ticket. Wrote 21 tickets in a whole year, investigated 51 accidents. Now that says there in the contract, you're supposed to look at those numbers and evaluate their performance. What standard do you use? Well, I tell you, the only standard I'm going to use is the Michigan State Police standard. Tony Cuevas comes here with the numbers all the time. That's the numbers you need to look at, and they're not even close. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public?
Jody Russ, 1273 Winding Way. After I went over there and sat down, I thought I'd let you guys say nice things about me and nice things about the library, and I certainly appreciate that, but I wanted to say I can't do what I do without the wonderful staff that I have. So there's 19 people that work in that building, and each and every one of them do amazing things for the library and for Bedford Township every day that they come to work. And they're the ones who come up with the ideas for the great programs. I'm just the one who supports the ideas that they want to do. And so I think we all feel very lucky that we have a mutual understanding relationship, you know, that if they feel passionate about something, then they just need to try it and see if it's supported by the community. And that's what makes libraries evolve into what their community needs as opposed to what libraries used to be seen as. So I didn't want to take credit for the wonderful things going on over there. I think it's great that I can support them, but they're the ones that are really doing it. So thank you.
Well, I would have to notice we have our county commissioner in the back, and whenever we have an elected official here, I'd like to give him an opportunity as well to kind of give us an update, if you'd like to come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just very quickly, I did want to touch on something that our board voted on earlier tonight, and it pertains to our South County water system. When we renegotiated, well, to back up very quickly, even though South County does control the water down here, it's still considered a county entity, and then it's back to each individual local municipality, Bedford, Erie, LaSalle, and so on and so forth. So in 2011, when we entered a new contract with Toledo, there was no provision for emergency services from the city of Monroe, South County Water providing to the city through Toledo, and Toledo to the city of Monroe back and forth. So tonight, after the Toledo board made their decision to authorize it, and last night, City Council authorized emergency water back and forth, our county board also authorized that as well, too, stating that going either way, either from the city of Monroe to Toledo or to Toledo to the city of Monroe, if there was an emergency, and that emergency was defined in the contract. I'm not going to go into the long paragraph of that, but essentially if there's a water shortage for either South County, the city of Monroe, or Toledo, going both ways once again, with written authorization, we can open up some valves and share water sources. So I just want to touch on that. I know water has been an important issue down here. I also wanted to say that it does not affect what our drain commissioner and so many of you have worked on for TAWA, which is the Toledo Area Water Association, which we're hoping to put into effect in the next 2 to 3 years, which would give South County and most importantly Bedford Township a seat at the table, possibly freeze some water rates, maybe even lower them, and give us a little bit more bargaining power going forward, so we're not subsidizing some things in Toledo. So that was one thing I wanted to touch on. If you guys have any other questions about what's going on at the county level, feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be more than happy to answer questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for being here. Any more comments from the public at all? No. Okay, comments from township board members? Ms. Tinneberry?
Yeah, well, first of all, since Greg spoke, I would hope that having heard what has been said tonight, this affects the county as well. And so for ethical reasons alone, if not other reasons, I think that not just Bedford Township needs to be following up on an investigation, or maybe that's not the right word, but a review of what goes on at the Sheriff's Department throughout the county. But basically, you're the employer, and I mean, I know he's elected, but, or the funding comes from what taxpayers pay to the county. So I would hope that you would take this information back, and something would be looked at the county as well. And for Jody, I totally agree. Jody's not the only one there, but she does enable it to happen. And I'm just going to encourage you to put this on your annual calendar so that we don't miss out on getting this wonderful annual review, which, as you said, is in the contract between the township and the county library. I also want to apologize to Logan for him being refused the FOIA. I don't understand that. Anything that is in a packet for us is basically public document. Once it comes, it's a public document. So I don't understand that, and I hope that that's cleared up, because in my mind that shouldn't have happened. And I'm not pointing a finger at the clerk's department though either, because we have some new employees that are just beginning to learn and understand the clerk's job is very, very vast and has a lot of fingers that it has to be able to educate the staff, and there could have been an error or mistake. I'm not sure, but I apologize that you were denied that. And then finally, you know, I mentioned at a previous board meeting as a liaison to the library board that it had, you know, the advisory board, nothing to do with Jody, the advisory board had voted to request the township board to put a 2.5 millage on the ballot. I just wanted to, the way rumors run amok in this township, I wanted to be sure that this board and the community understands that her report today had nothing to do with anything that the advisory board has discussed and decided or talked about. That will come at a later time, be presented to this board by the advisory board, but the two have nothing to do with each other, and I just didn't want that misinformation to be out there. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Steiner?
Just two things. Jody, you're right. It is your team, and that's what most organizations are. It's a team that becomes successful, but it does take a good leader. As you've seen here in the township, we've got some other departments that we've been able to do a lot of things in the last couple of years, and it is due to good leadership. But it does take a team, because that's where the efforts really take place, and that's where a lot of the work takes place. So as usual, good job to you and your team. They deserve a lot of applause for what they've done. Making the library a community place, that's huge. And I'm really impressed, though, when you said that from the history side, that somebody tapped that internet from France and from Canada. Pretty amazing. So that also can be used as a very good tool to promote Bedford. So if there's people coming from all over, it doesn't have to be just somebody that had family that started here. It could be anything. So keep up the good work there, and keep, you know, pushing Bedford out there. And anything we can do to help you with that information-wise or pass information between the library and our website that is useful, please send it our way as well. Second thing, Mr. Supervisor, I've had a couple people approach me recently. We do read and see things on the potential Toledo Area Water Authority. But a lot of people say, well, what are they really saying? And I know there's still a lot of work in progress, but could we possibly get someone to come present us with a little bit more information at a meeting and hear some of the facts so we can really get the information out to our citizens and where we might be headed?
I'll get a hold of the Drain Commissioner. They represent us.
Right.
So I'll have them do that.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Frederick?
I'm learning more in the Toledo Blade about what's going on with the Toledo Area Water Authority than our Drain Commissioner, and he's getting paid $40,000 to represent us. So it seems to me that he ought to be trundling in here with great abandon. From what I understand, it's presently in the hands of the Toledo Council, and then in turn, the citizens will vote on whether or not they're going to go along with it. But in the interim, so I'm learning from the papers, this association is looking at moving along without Toledo. I agree with Mr. Steiner, we ought to bring in the Drain Commissioner and say, hey, what's going on? Tell us what's going on. We're 99% of the water distribution in South County Water. So we should be brought up to date on a continuing basis as to what's going on. I heard Mr. Ansel say he didn't like politicians. I have to tell you a story. I got a phone call one day and a guy was just screaming at me. He said, there's three things that I hate. I hate politicians, I hate lawyers, and I hate Presbyterian ministers. I said, well, I'm over two. Mr. Ansel just gave some information to the two trustees at the end. I have all of that. I have all of the stuff you gave us. They're going to get it. They're going to get piles of it. But that's the second meeting. That's not the first meeting. First meeting, as I think we've said, was going to be simply the questions and answers and thoughts about how the contract reads. And then the second meeting, I presume, will be a discussion of alternatives. So I have that stuff that you gave me. And I look forward to having a committee of the whole to discuss it, digest it, make some decisions, make some directions, give us some directions so that we don't just walk around in circles. I'm tired of meeting the last 2 months and 2.5 months and on the internet 10, 12, 15 hours a week getting information. I got a huge file back here. I'm not going to bring it to the meeting necessarily, but some of the stuff is important. So, Mr. Supervisor, let's look forward to the 21st at 8 o'clock. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Francis?
I appreciate the information that we've gotten over the last several weeks.
Yeah.
What I don't appreciate, though, are the threats. I received one last Friday on my phone. At the end, it said, this is not a threat, but come on, I can read. We also heard it tonight at the podium. So we're all aiming for the same thing. Why do we have to threaten people? I don't think we do. And I'm tired of it. The issue that Mr. Tisdale keeps bringing up has to do with, does the contract with the Sheriff's Department allow for them to substitute for contract deputies that happen to be off for the day, for training, for vacation, for sick, for personal, whatever. They're off, they're allowed a maximum of 35 days that they are allowed to take off for those reasons. The issue, as I look at it, from reading the response, which I doubt if he's read by what he said tonight, I think the contract allows the sheriff's office to substitute for those missing people. The contract also says that if that's the case, we're supposed to request it, and then we pay for it. They've provided it and have never billed us and don't intend to. That's one of the answers we got. Now, maybe people don't like the answer that they gave, but that doesn't mean it wasn't an answer given. And I think the whole issue that he's dealing with is the hours that are shown on those monthly reports are all of the hours spent by the Sheriff's Department in Bedford Township. Contract deputies plus others that happen to work in Bedford for any period of time during that month. They're all there. And look at them. The report that you all got shows an average of 20,000 hours total. 18 of them we are owed for the contract. That's 2,000 hours that they have reported to us that cover the other duties that are not contractual duties, but are duties and services rendered by them to us. Now, that's my interpretation of it. We need to thrash through that and come to agreement. Does it really mean that or doesn't it? That's what we're all about, but we'll get there. It's just, we need to do it the right way and not the fast way. And I just feel the threats don't help that.
Do you want to respond to a couple of the comments that were made?
If you would like me to.
Sure, sure.
Mr. Ansel asked a question, and I'm going to paraphrase it here, but is it illegal for a committee or for this board to receive information from a citizen? Well, of course it's not. But I think the bigger question that I was asked was whether there may have been a violation of the Open Meetings Act. And I gave several answers to that question depending on the circumstances. So you have to listen carefully to the question before you provide an answer, because each question may have a variable that changes the answer. So certainly it's not illegal for a citizen to provide information to a township committee or to a township board. Where it becomes less clear is whether there's been a violation of the Open Meetings Act if a committee is holding meetings. And I'm not going to get into all of that at this point in time. I don't think it's appropriate, but have there been violations of the Open Meetings Act with respect to this ad hoc committee? I can defend confidently what has transpired, that there have been no violations of the Open Meetings Act. On a going forward basis, I suggested to our township leaders that if we are going to invite members of the public to join 3 elected officials, then that should be an open meeting. It should be posted. There should be an agenda. There should be a time for public comment. And the reason I say that is because if you're inviting non-elected officials to a committee meeting to the exclusion of other members of the public, then that can be interpreted as a violation. What's transpired up until this point in time, I can confidently say that the township has not violated. This committee has not violated the Open Meetings Act. What I'm happy about actually is that this committee of the whole meeting, because this is an issue that needs to be reviewed by our entire board, and I think doing it at a committee of the whole meeting, which is open to the public, facilitates exchange between members of the community and this board, and you can make an informed decision. and also other people that are involved, such as when you get to that point, inviting members from the Sheriff's Department to provide information, answer questions. So that's that. With respect to Mr. Tisdale and his Freedom of Information Act request, the Freedom of Information Act provides that if a request is made, the unit of government has 5 business days in which to respond. Your Freedom of Information Act request will be responded within that time period. And I think the 5th day is tomorrow. At least that's what I was informed, and I believe that to be accurate. So you will receive the public records that you requested. That was never an issue that you wouldn't receive them. I'll fall on the sword, Logan, and say this, that I thought it was appropriate because we had time. It was appropriate to provide our elected officials with that information that came from the Sheriff's Department so they could see it, so they could digest it, and be prepared to speak on it tonight. But I knew no decisions were going to be made tonight because there's a lot of work left to be done. So, and I knew you wouldn't be shortchanged in your ability to look at the responses and provide input to this entire board. So, with the comfort of knowing that we were within the time frame that's allowed by the Open Meetings Act, and that's 5 business days, I recommended to our clerk's department, provide it to our board members, don't make it part of the packet that would be published to the public until our board members had a chance to look at it, and then that public record will be disseminated, and that'll happen tomorrow.
Okay. And it's be known to me that we were a committee, for one thing, because I thought it was just us getting together, because the only way you can have a true committee is if the board creates a committee, according to the MTA, and the board never created a committee. It was just a group of elected officials meeting. The Open Meetings Act is for 3 or more elected officials getting together, so you don't have more than a quorum. That's my understanding, so. Okay, couple few things. The Bedford Township Annual Spring Cleanup is Saturday, April 21st, from 8 to 4, located behind the bus garage by Indian Creek Community Park. There's a lot of information on our website and Facebook page about that, what you can bring there and dispose. So look for that. I just wanted to remind people, burning season is this weekend. It starts, but keep in mind, we have a booklet with all the kind of do's and don'ts with burning. You know, with ditches, there's no burning in ditches. Driveways, you have to be 25 feet from a structure and 15 feet from lot line. So there's a lot of things you have to follow with that. But I would recommend use Mulch King's site off 110 Smith Road. It's free to Bedford Township residents. You know, and I would just say be considerate of your neighbors with the leaves being wet and windy, you know, on nice days. So just keep that in mind. June 21st, from 3 to 7 at the Township Hall, they're having the Hazardous Waste Day. Keep your eyes out for the announcement with that, but I just want to talk about that. We are continuing to meet with Nancy Crandall from the township, from the schools, from Bedford Public Schools, Diane Carroll from the Senior Center, and some residents and myself to kind of talk about a senior center and what the future holds, and just kind of just talking about ideas, and you know, so we'll continue to meet on that, and I'll continue to update you. I want to let you know about a bike ride that is going to be held May 19th. There's going to be a family ride, kind of what was talked about tonight with Mr. Pryor. There'll be a family ride through neighborhoods that'll start at Jackman Road, and then there'll be a longer ride, a 30-mile bike ride that is SEMCOG is helping out with, Toledo Metropolitan Council of Governments, and Erie Township. There's going to be a 30-mile bike ride from Forest View that goes through Erie, through Toledo and back to Forest View. All the donations from that will go to the girls' soccer team and the senior send-off program. So look for that. I've heard a lot lately about why does Bedford Township continue building these condominiums, and, you know, you're just building these places for older people to live, and it's like, every time you build these condominiums and these sites, you free up one of the houses for a younger person to move into with a family. So keep that in mind. We have to have places for people like Mr. Francis to move into as well, and Lamar, and Phil, you're about there now. You know, we got to give these guys a home. So, and that opens up a place for, sorry, I left you out, Ms. Tinneberry. Sorry. And Nancy, you're already there, so.
You're going to be in trouble.
Sorry about that. And Jody, I just wanted to say, you guys really do have a great staff over there. I love going over there. It just kind of feels like family when I walk in there. You know, you really do. It's well-run, well-organized, and I think we're going to continue to make it better. And I will call the drain commissioner to get him here at the next meeting, him or his deputy. And I just wanted to comment real briefly on the police. There's a lot of work to be done, and we've said from the start, let's take our time. Let's take our time, let's do it right, let's not rush it, and that's what we've done. And I'm glad we've done that, because throughout the whole process, we've learned a lot, discovered some things, and, you know, I think it's the best way to do it. So I look forward to the meeting coming up. Other than that, if there's no comments or anything anybody would like to say, it's been a great week, couple weeks at the township, and look forward to serving the public. Anybody have anything? We stand adjourned.